I good, Brad?
Yep.
Okay.
Go.
So, about 5 or 6 years ago, I was working in the medical center in Houston for Baylor College of Medicine. I was chatting with one of my patients, which I usually do during physical exam, and she was telling me how she was going back to school to be a social worker to specifically target human trafficking because it's such a big problem in Houston. And I was like, huh? What are you talking about? That's like about 6-ish years ago. And it just sort of resonated with me and stuck with me, did some research, and fast forward, came on as faculty member here about 3-ish years ago. And I asked around, started asking School of Medicine, residents, PAs, nurses, everybody, you know, is this taught anywhere in the curriculum or any of the programs or the schools? And the response I got was kind of like, huh? Same thing as me, you know, years ago is, you know, huh, what are you talking about? This is a problem, this is an issue? No, we don't know anything about it. So I just decided to take this baby on and I'm gonna develop a curriculum about this and start teaching, you know, medical professionals, you know, School of Medicine, nursing, PAs, everybody, how to identify victims and what that looks like, and that's kind of on the medical, you know, medical me side, medical hat. And then just as a person, as a parent, I have twin girls that are 15. So as a parent, I have issues with human trafficking. And then, you know, there's a whole spiritual side of it, the human rights side of it. So it's kind of like these, I'm pulled in so many different directions when it comes to this issue. And why this, you know, it's like anything else, you know, why specifically human trafficking has resonated with me, I have no idea. It's just something that, you know, powers that be just put on my heart, and I just have a passion for it, so it's just one of those things. And coming into it, I really thought that I would be, you know, on the front lines, you know, banging down doors and like making a big difference. And then, you know, when I'm telling this to people in different organizations, they're like, well, hang on, calm down. We just need someone out there educating people. We need you to educate people, tell everybody that'll listen, especially the healthcare providers when you're in the ER, when you're in the clinics, what these patients look like. We actually, it was during actually a scope meeting that we discovered there was one of the students said that she was on one of her rotations, or I guess they do rotations in their, or sort of, it's like 3rd year, here at John Seeley, and there was a patient that they suspected was being trafficked. She had a lot of mental health issues. She was mentally disabled. She didn't really know what was going on. She was sort of dumped at the hospital and had really no contact information. A gentleman had called and said that he wanted to come pick her up. And they said, you're gonna have to actually come in, sign some paperwork, talk to us, and wouldn't do it. And so basically they suspected that she was a person that was being trafficked, and that was just right here in Galveston. So this has really become, when I say it's like in our backyards, it's literally in our backyards. And so human trafficking today is really this hidden way that people are enslaved. We drive by, you know, to think that we drive by in our cars and you see these, I mean, ladies, or maybe even gentlemen, I don't want to discriminate here, maybe you like pedicures too, and manis and petties, but when you're going by these salons, and, you know, you kind of know if it's the right salon for you, you know, some of these weird little shady, you know, it's like, I don't think that's the right, you know, salon for me type of thing. And you know this in your head because it looks weird. It's got this little blinkety blink, you know, sign. Why is it open at 11 p.m. at night? This is weird. You know, so you know that's not really for you. And why doesn't it bother us much more than it is because you keep driving your car? I mean, I think that opening our eyes to that, like, you know what, something's not right about that. That's definitely an issue. And say, if it's right there in your neighborhood, and these places are literally here in Galveston. I live in League City. They're in League City, Friendswood. And that's what we call commercial front brothels. Does anyone know the answer to this question? What age most victims start to become trafficked? Not if you're a PA, you know my spiel. So a non-PA may answer? 8. 8? I'm gonna go with 8. What is it, PAs?
13. It's 13.
The average age most victims are trafficked is 13. there is, data on this for sure, but just before I had like the real data, I lie awake at night and think about these things I tend to do. And I thought, why 13? Why would this be? And I just decided this on my own. Age 12 is when you can legally be home alone. No more daycare. You can walk home from school and be home alone. So age 12 to 15, then 16 you can drive. So 12 to 15 is this lost window of age groups in which you're walking home from school, you're looking something to do after school, you can't drive, none of your friends can drive, mom and dad aren't home yet, or maybe they don't even have, maybe mom and dad aren't even around much, or they're working 2 or 3 jobs, you don't know what their life is like. And when people think of human trafficking, they think, oh, well, that's like, a Russian mail order bride, or that's in Thailand, or they don't think it's right here in America. And it really is. Actually, most of the girls that are trafficked are American citizens right here. They're not, certainly it does happen where there are folks that are smuggled over, especially in Texas from Mexico, but most of them are just right here in America, right here, United States citizens. One neat thing that really stands out, of course, this is, a multi-billion-dollar industry, and it's thought that human trafficking will one day surpass drugs and arms dealing, which is very disturbing because that's also a multi-billion-dollar industry. But one thing that really stands out to me is that 42% of the recruiters are women. Okay, so any ideas about that? Why women? That seems
More trusting.
more trusting.
They grew up in it, so they don't really see it anymore.
Maybe they grew up in the life and now they're turned to being a recruiter. Yeah, absolutely. And interestingly enough, one of the organizations that I work with, one of their spiels and one of their education pieces is that, which I think is very disturbing, is that they have found a number of recruiters, high school cheerleaders. Right there at Friendswood High School, they found one. Clear Springs High School, where one of my kids goes to school. Scary. Yeah, my daughter came home from school and she said, "Mom, they broke up a prostitution ring at school." Oh, joy! Right here at Clear Creek, ISD. And then I told her, and of course, they're sick of, they're like, "Oh, Mom," but I'm telling them all my spiel. And I said, well, they're not really prostitutes. They get sucked into this life. And now with social media, it's even more scary. You can be talking and they can easily, wrap you in. But how that all starts there in the high schools, and it's interesting because this trafficker still allows them to go to school. It's not like they're chained to a wall. It's like, no, keep going to school and, find some more girls for daddy, quote unquote. And what do they get in return? Well, they get Louis Vuittons. And they get to go shopping. And they get all these things. Oh, and they've even been told that he loves me. And no one's ever told me that they love me before. They don't have, access to things. Maybe their parents, like I said, aren't really around, and there's not a lot of discipline and that type of thing too. So it's definitely getting more into the schools, and teachers are starting to recognize too some of these things. Also, flight attendants, there's a lot of different education pieces and occupations. So recruitment, transportation, transfer, harboring, and receipt of persons through by means of threat, force, coercion. And that can be mental. It doesn't always have to be a physical empowerment. So that's something to think about too. There's a lot of different types of trafficking. The street base is what people think of as prostitution, but usually, there are traffickers right around the corner watching them, listening. There might be a cell phone on them or some type of device allowing them to listen in on what's being said when they approach a John, so to speak, or they get approached. Usually, and it depends on, a lot of people say, oh, if the girl's 13 or 15, I don't see these girls out on the street. A lot of the girls in the United States, they are runaways. It's not like a snatch and grab type of thing. It's usually like a grooming effect, and usually these girls that run away from home, let's say, they're going to be approached within 24 hours. So it's not like they're on the streets for days or weeks at a time. It's like, no, you're going to get picked up pretty quickly. And they will be promised to have a good life, come, I'll take care of you, and that type, or you need a hot meal, come, I'll take care of you, that type of thing. And usually those folks, the younger ones are in the hotel motel based, the commercial front brothels. Those are the, I guess, quote unquote, prettier girls that they keep kind of locked away for some time, and that's going to be a period of where they're, in a sense, sort of brainwashing them, and then they can allow them to easily go out and be more street-based. So usually the street-based folks have been in the life for a while, and they're a little bit older, but they're still being threatened nonetheless. Online ads has also been a big thing. I don't know if you've ever heard of Backpage. That's has been very popular, but it's been shut down around the time of the Super Bowl. So these are all ways of trafficking. Mainly what I target is sex trafficking, but certainly there's agriculture, domestic work, restaurant-based, and that type of thing too. Okay, so what city has the highest number of trafficked victims in the nation? Anybody know? Us? Is it us? DC? Any other thoughts? You got Houston, DC? Agree on that? How many people say Houston? Okay, how many people say DC? How many people think New York? Miami? LA? It's actually Houston. As far as we know, it's the #1 city in America for human trafficking. The way that we know that is because of the phone calls that come into Harris County are just numerous compared to any other county or city in the country. So we know that it's there. We know that they're getting those phone calls. And so that's why that's really mostly thought of. But it's a hidden thing, so do we really know? We really don't know for sure. We also have a number of organizations that are citywide, statewide, and national. And so these are kind of some big hot spots of where human trafficking is popular. The reason why Houston is thought to be #1 is because we have 2 international airports. We have a large port of Houston. We have Interstate 10, so I-10, you can just jump on I-10, and usually they head east because then within about 5-6 hours you're out of the state, and then you can keep on continuing. A lot of truckers, they go up to Nashville, so Nashville is another hot spot. So what they want to do is get that victim out of their comfort zone. So they're not going to just stick around in the city or town that they are. A lot of times they're going to move them out somewhere else, so that when they get out of a truck or wherever they are, they're not anywhere that's going to be in their comfort zone or around any support system. And we do the same thing once someone is discovered or self-identifies as a victim. We can get them to a retreat or a safe place. We do the same thing. So we don't keep them in the city. A lot of these organizations take them far out. There's a ranch retreat kind of close to College Station. But these are undisclosed places, and we get them out of their comfort zone so that, a lot of these girls, what they want to do, the first instinct is to return back to their trafficker, daddy, because that's where they felt safe. That's the only person that they knew. So that's one thing that we also do, and that's something that I actually struggle with too, is that these folks that are rescued, it's a long process, sometimes years, to be able to get them to a place where they can introduce, back into society. A lot of different risk factors. Some of them are individual, like I said, runaways, a lot LGBT status, transgender. Unfortunately, there's a larger population there. Family, usually maybe poverty, definitely a family dysfunction, but it does not discriminate based on your socioeconomic status, because of course, as you know, like Friendswood and these other, neighborhoods and things are much more affluent, so it does not does not necessarily mean a poverty situation, but definitely a dysfunctional one. Sometimes where there's high crime, peer pressure certainly, and then societal issues, just a lack of awareness, lack of education, or law enforcement. And some of them too, some of the girls are afraid to self-identify as a trafficked victim or ask for help, because some of these Johns, unfortunately, are police officers, judges, lawyers, And so another organization, what I've really appreciated about just Harris County and Houston is that no one's trying to reinvent the wheel or step on toes. It's all these different organizations doing different things. There's one organization that specifically tries to help adult women. Some help children. Some are helping more, giving more resources. Some educating the community. There's one called Unbound that specifically goes to juvenile detention centers just to educate girls or young kids at risk. So maybe they got picked up for shoplifting or whatever, it might be. And they're just at risk just based on that. So they'll try and talk to them about human trafficking specifically. The sad thing is that, with drugs and firearms, you only can sell drugs one time, firearms one time. But the human body, you can sell it over and over and over. So it's kind of a disturbing thought. A lot of these girls are sold minimum 30 times a day. And they have certain quotas that they have to meet. So if they ask for anything small, just, it could be anything of necessity, like maybe a bar of soap, maybe a toothbrush. Oh, well, go get a couple of Johns and then I'll give you a toothbrush. Menstrual cycle, even getting a tampon, anything. You want anything, it's gonna cost you. Any little necessity of life. Super Bowl is one big draw. Does anyone have an idea why?
A lot of people from out of state.
Yeah, a lot of people from out of state. It's also thought of kind of as women as entertainment. So, you draw even big conventions that are in town or conferences. That will be another reason to have kind of these women available, which is kind of a disturbing thought. Recently, when we had the Super Bowl here, I think I read that there was about 350 arrests or something like specifically to human trafficking, regarding human trafficking. So that was pretty unprecedented and huge to have that. A couple of the students have been impassioned about this, human trafficking, and they started an organization last year called SWAT, Students Working Against Trafficking. And the students, they did a fundraiser raising lipsticks. So that sounds kind of weird, but during the Super Bowl, what they did was I think they raised about a little over 200 lipsticks. And what they do is they give them to this organization. I think specifically they gave it to Elijah Rising. And then what they do is they put with that little barcode where you have that little number, whatever scan barcode with all those little tiny numbers. They put a barcode over that, and instead of having just random tiny numbers, it's actually a 1-800 number. So they give out these lipsticks to the girls, and then they don't get in trouble, because if you try to give a business card or some kind of hotline help card or something, you're gonna get in trouble if that's found with their person. So giving them a lipstick and kind of bettering, their look and that type of thing, and the traffickers don't really mind too much about that.
That's actually an idea that we got from you. We had a couple of patients in clinic that were victims of domestic violence, and they were still in their relationships. Their boyfriends and husbands would read their after-visit summary and be there in the clinic with them. And so we couldn't find a way of giving them the number.
Yes.
So we kind of printed it and taped it onto their little makeup thing.
Yes.
So that they would
love
have
it. Oh my gosh, it's awesome. I love it.
But you are our inspiration for doing that.
Oh, I love it. I love it. We have to keep getting smarter and smarter, because the traffickers, trust me, are always one step ahead. Now the drug dealers, guess what they're dealing? Antibiotics. Why are they dealing antibiotics? Keep the girls clean so they don't have to come see you and don't see you to suspect human trafficking. So now it's easy. They can just deal their antibiotics, and believe me, they're the right ones. To cover, gonorrhea, chlamydia, keep their girls clean. Don't want to go see those smart healthcare providers, because then we're going to get caught. Usually by the time you see anybody in the healthcare setting, they're going to be really, really sick. I was talking with Dr. Lynch one day. He had a girl at one point with kidney failure. So these kids, I call them kids or girls. Sometimes they are approaching adulthood in their late teens. They're really sick. They're going to be really sick with something. This is just an example of Backpage. I didn't actually go on Backpage to get that. I made a student do that for me. I'm kind of a nerd. I was like, I want to go on and like be, my door, knocked down. But these are actually, so they're not a student. These are actual pictures in Houston. And what happens is these places, they don't really care about location all the time because they're just going to pop up somewhere else. So they can quickly close down and then just open up down the street, no problem at all. And a lot of times they'll be family owned, so it'll be like Uncle so-and-so or whatever. I mean, I don't know, maybe they're brothers, cousins, I don't know. That own all these places, so they can quickly shut one down and open one back up down the street. It's no big deal. Elijah Rising is an organization. They actually have the one and only what they call modern day slavery museum. They took over a commercial front brothel, and they really were part of the people that like broke the door down and rescued these girls. And they transformed the building into this museum, so they kind of kept some of the same environments. They have all these different, education materials and rooms that you can go in and see some of the conditions that are real life conditions. They also do which is very interesting, they do a van tour. So they will actually take you for free, any number of people, I think up to 12 or so, around the Houston area to show you and point out some of these places that harbor victims. And one thing, and this is an example of some of the conditions, this is a back room of a cantina. This is a back room of like a massage parlor. I'm not sure where that actually is. That might be some garage somewhere. So these are some of the real life conditions. These are pictures from actually Elijah Rising's museum. I don't have time for the video, but I believe it's posted on Blackboard. Anything that you can do to, put awareness out there, put education out there. And now my other thing that I struggle with is, okay, so maybe we can reduce the supply or save some of the supply, but how do we reduce the demand for that? And that's something that I personally, always, struggle with as far as that education piece, because that's really talking to young guys, kids, and really getting the word out there. And it's hard because some guys that want to help and want to be a part of some of these organizations, it's hard because the girls are scared. They don't want to be around guys. So any kind of background help that you can do as guys, we certainly always appreciate that. I saw this one interview with this lady, kind of like a little grandma lady. She was enraged about, the most recent, people that had moved up in her neighborhood. It was like one of those commercial front brothels. She was, mad about that, and kind of venting to her pastor and said, I don't know what to do, about this, and why can't something be done? And the pastor said simply, what would you normally do if someone moves into your neighborhood? And she said, well, I'd bake them muffins. And he said, well, do that. Bake them muffins. She said, what are you talking about? Well, she just decided to go with it. I'm going to bake them some muffins. So she goes and she bakes them some muffins. She goes over there and takes it to them. And they were so overjoyed. And then she could come out and tell the police and law enforcement exactly how many they were, what they looked like, where the girls were kept, et cetera, et cetera. So now she's like frontline muffin baker and giving information to law enforcement. I'm like, there you go. I mean, that's something so simple. And so I think that anything that we can do, it's small bits. It's definitely a slow fight. Like I said, I thought I'd be on the front lines banging down doors, but it turns out, it's, even if you save one person, or educate one person and then they educate another person, that's doing something, definitely. Health consequences, as you can imagine, there's many. The response that's very difficult is that the victims usually don't think that they're victims. They think that they're a girlfriend or they don't. But it's hard to explain their mindset but they don't really discover, a lot of these girls don't really discover the identification of a victim until well into, unfortunately, imprisonment. You know, they get picked up for quote unquote prostitution, they go to jail, and then it's later that they find out in prison, wait a minute, I think this was happening to me, I think I'm a victim of this. And so it doesn't come out too much later, but now law enforcement is, the more education that they've received, they're able to see that no, these girls are really victims, they're not prostitutes. So that's been thankful for that. Problems with disclosure, as you can imagine, they're ashamed. There might be a language barrier. I read that in Houston alone, there's 93 spoken languages and dialects. 93, just right here. So it's very easy to blend in. There's, I think it's World Health Organization who has several different languages of education materials that you can distribute. So there's flyers, just name it, any language that you can think of. So that's fortunate too. What questions do you guys have? These are some questions that you can potentially ask. And again, this is something that's posted on Blackboard so that you have access to that. We don't have a lot of time today because it's already 7 o'clock. But one of the things that I go into is specifically from a healthcare worker perspective, what these girls look like, to how to identify them. A lot of times they may have certain tattoos or branding on their bodies. Maybe it's a scanned barcode looking tattoo. I read of one girl who had the trafficker's name backwards on her chest. When they asked her why is that backwards on her chest, it's because every time you look in the mirror, you know who you belong to. Yeah. So looking out for things that just don't make sense. Like someone said earlier, the recruiters, women, because it's safe, it doesn't look like, I always thought, when you come into this situation, you're gonna pinpoint who the victim is. Oh, well, classically, it's gonna be like a 12-year-old girl and an old creepy man, coming into the ER. That's not the case. It's gonna be a young girl and maybe an older woman that's older sister, pretending to be a mother or aunt or cousin coming in if she has any problems. Also, there might be a cell phone laid out, and that's the trafficker on the other end listening to make sure that they're not saying anything, and they're usually like kind of just around the corner. So you kind of have to be, pretty savvy with these folks, and you don't want to endanger their life, but certainly, being careful with some of these things. So a part of that curriculum goes more into specific identification and helping those victims have resources. What questions or comments do you guys have? I know it's kind of a dark subject to end on. Again, I don't know, why this is sort of imprinted on my heart, something that I'm very, very passionate about. And I'm so excited that, a lot of students have been excited about it too, and getting, really behind and formulating this organization that's actually university-wide, so SWAT. So feel free to email me if any questions come up or you'd like to find out more how you might be able to get involved. So I'm kind of connected to about 3 different organizations in the Houston area. You can email me directly. Also, you could email swatutmb@gmail, and that's the SWAT officers and co-founders that are connected here on campus. So, all right, thank you guys.